We've all been there. We've written a cue that we feel great about and sent it off to the library, to the client or taxi, and then nothing. I tell you, the deafening silence of rejection can be cruel compensation for all the hours we spend toiling away trying to make it in this business. But what if I told you that we can be the masters of our fate, the captains of our very own musical soul when it comes to cues that haven't found a home? Well, today I'm going to unpack 4 things you can do with your unused or unloved music. Plus, we're going to take a listen to an advertiser-friendly, elegant cue written by a member of the 52 Cues community on this week's episode of the 52 Cues podcast. What is happening, everybody? This is Dave Croft, and welcome back to another episode of the 52 Cues podcast, a weekly podcast dedicated to all things production and library music, where we talk about industry topics and take deep dives into the different aspects of being a working production music composer. Plus, we feature a cue written by a member of the 52 Cues community, and this week, we're going to take a listen to Designed Elegance, which is an advertiser-friendly, elegant cue written by Rolpf, Schild, so you definitely want to stick around for that. If this is your first time here, welcome. I'm so glad you found me, however you found me. I know you have a ton of options out there, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening via the audio podcast. I just want to thank you for spending part of your day with me. I also have to give a special word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep the podcast, the channel, everything here going. We are 100% community supported, so if you like what I do here, don't thank me. Thank them. But if you want to learn more about how you can help support 52 Cues and also unlock extra perks like live streams, workshops, Zoom feedback sessions, and a ton more, then be sure to click on the links in the description or stick around because we're going to be talking more about that later in today's episode. So you've written a cue, you feel great about it, you loved it, you've pitched it, you've either sent it off to taxi or you've sent an email out and nothing. It's not gotten picked up, or it's maybe gotten put into a library but haven't gotten placed with it. And what do you do with that music? It can be really frustrating and kind of, dare I say, soul crushing when you've written music that really hasn't gotten a ton of traction. Well, you actually have a little bit of agency here, probably more agency than you think. So I want to talk about the 4 things that you can do with your unused, unloved cues, plus a bonus 5th thing. So let's first start with music that hasn't been picked up. Okay, so if it's not been picked up by the library after several pitches, then the first thing you can do is send it off to a stock music house like Pond 5 or Motion Array, or find another non-exclusive home for it. The stock music marketplaces, they tend to have a little bit lower barrier of entry. That's not to say that it's super easy, but they tend to allow more music into their catalog. And so the same cue that might not have gotten love from BMG or Warner Chappell or 5 Alarm or Taxi might find a home and get some traction over at Pond 5 or Artlist or Audio Jungle. And so try pitching your things up to those marketplaces, but do keep in mind, however, that the clients are a little bit different. You know, the folks that shop for music at Pond 5 aren't going to be the ones who are looking to necessarily have a high profile placement in broadcast sports or like a Netflix show or something. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but it's less likely. Usually, in my experience and my understanding, is folks shopping these marketplaces tend to be more independent or smaller firms looking to make videos that might go on their YouTube channel or maybe Instagram or even internal videos. Again, it's not to say that you can't have something picked up from those catalogs that get a lot of traction, but by their nature, they are royalty free, and the mechanism isn't necessarily in place for you to gather a lot of back-end royalties. Usually you're putting your music up there and they pay a subscription fee. The users pay a subscription fee, monthly fee, and then you get percentage of that based on how many downloads you get. But the point is that if you've sent stuff off that hasn't gotten placed, then send it up to stock music libraries. Like I said, Pond 5, Audio Jungle, although I'm not sure Audio Jungle's taking submissions right now. Motion Array. Motion Array is kind of the big one right now. And be sure to tune in just a few weeks, because we're going to be having Stephen Bedall join us and talk about some stock music strategies. So this is right in line with what he's talking about. Also Artlist, but Artlist does have a little bit higher barrier of entry. But my point is that these stock music libraries have a much more open door that you might be able to find some love. And because it's a marketplace, it's not going up to a library that's then going to try to pitch it to a show or a network. Instead, it's a marketplace. So your music's up there and you can price it however you want. If it's saleable, I think Pond 5 has a tier that you can put your music either in the subscription lane or in the download lane, or the pay per download. And maybe it finds some love. Maybe you get a few bucks. Getting a few bucks in the stock music catalog is better than getting $0 living on your hard drive. So that's really the first thing you can do. Or you can try to find other non-exclusive libraries, which gets into some Googling, gets into trying to find these types of arrangements. But if it's not been picked up after several pitches, then put it up to a stock music library. I did this for quite a while when I was starting. I would pitch either to Taxi or something, and then I would have it live up into Pond 5 until it got picked up. Maybe made a few bucks, not much. I didn't push hard into it, unlike like Stephen Bedall, who has found amazing success with that type of with those types of placements in the stock music world. But while I was pitching, it also lived in Pond 5. And so if it got picked up, then I pulled it from Pond 5. I did let the library know that, hey, this has been out in Pond 5. It might get placed. Generally, it's a non-issue. Where things might get a little squirrely is if you've also registered in Content ID. That might gum up the works a little bit, in which case the library might just want to do a simple retitle. Or if you've pitched your music up onto Pond 5, but also released via something like Song Trust or TuneCore or CD Baby Publishing, where you're actually signing over some of your publishing. And I remember that's the kind of thing that we talked about when I had Michael Lasko on the show a while back. Talked about you're gumming up the works, you're creating friction. So just be really careful with that. The other thing to keep in mind with stock music catalogs, and this I know we're going to go into when we talk with Stephen Bedall, is the type of cues that get used are a little bit different. Like if your favorite thing is percolating tension music that's going to go underneath a crime show, well, the reality is not many TV producers are looking for music for those types of shows in those marketplaces. It's going to be really corporate friendly stuff, a lot of kind of uplifting type cues which are holiday focused. So, right now, as of this taping, it's right before Thanksgiving. And I don't know, this actually might come out after Thanksgiving. It's going to come out the week of Thanksgiving. Christmas is right around the corner. And so the couple of months ago, Christmas cues were really high in demand at places like Pond 5 and Motion Array, because that's when videos were getting made for those times of year. Because by now, those videos have already long been made, probably not getting a lot of placements or a lot of downloads for Christmas music by now. We're too close to Christmas, but in October, September, yeah, that's also when Taxi was running a lot of their Christmas searches, September and October. But those holiday cues, seem to get a lot of love. But percolating crime tension, probably not. Epic trailers, maybe. But stock music, check them out. See if that works, because you can do something with your queue. It's not solely up to the library to find homes for it. You can find homes. So that's the first thing. The next thing is if it is a taxi return. If you've submitted up to taxi and it's returned, just keep in mind that you don't owe that listing anything. Like, you don't have to sit on that brief. Like, if you submitted it up to a listing, you don't have to wait to hear back before you do something else with that queue. No, repitch it. Pitch it to another library. Pitch it to another taxi listing. Of course, assuming that it's the right fit. But you don't owe that listing. You don't owe an imaginary library who may be looking for this queue. You don't owe them anything. So don't sit on it. Repitch it. And if it's been forwarded, that's cool. But if it hasn't been signed, you still don't owe that library, that forward. You still don't owe them anything. Maybe give them a couple of months. I think after 3 months, if you've not heard back from a forward, it's fair game. After 6 months, absolutely. Absolutely. So out of courtesy, it might not be a bad idea if you've gotten a forward, you just kind of sit on it for a couple of months. But even then, you don't necessarily have to. So repitch it to another listing. Keep finding other homes for it. Like, let's say you've pitched something to a library that not through taxi, but just yourself, and it's not. There was some traction, maybe some emails back and forth, and then the thread just kind of dried up, and that happens. It's totally fine. You know, there was real interest, and then life happens, or maybe their needs changed, or maybe the guy you were in contact with is no longer with the company. Then what? Well, move on. Pitch it somewhere else, or pick up the thread, find out, where who the contact person is now, and try to rekindle that relationship, because at some point that queue might have been a fit for that library. But until paperwork is done, until you've signed on the dotted line, filled out the contract, given them your IPI number, given them, you've signed the schedule that lists all the queues that have been written, until you've done that, you legally don't owe them anything. Even if verbally through emails or through text or even phone calls, there's been an agreed upon thing. It's not necessarily the best, most professional thing to do. Is if you have a spoken agreement about finding a home for your queue, and even though no paperwork's been done, it's good business practice and it's professional courtesy, to not just yoink it and stick it somewhere else. But if the thread's gone cold, then pick up the thread again, email them out, and then if after then they still don't want it or respond, if they ghost you, then no. I was recently working with a student who went through this very same thing. And this, along with some other things, is what kind of made me want to do this topic, is what do you do with these unused queues? Because I knew of another home for that queue that he had written. And he said, well, a year and a half or so, there was a lot of real traction. And so he pitched it, and there was a verbal agreement that, yep, we're going to take it. And then nothing, kind of ghosted, the library stopped responding to emails. Come to find out, his contact person had left the company. And so when it came time for possibly finding another home for it, He was well within his legal rights to just take it and pitch it somewhere else, find another home for it. But because the student's a good guy, he checked in and said, hey, this is what I want to do. This is who I am. This is the deal that we had. This is what we had discussed long ago. But I just want to check in. Basically, giving that library first right of refusal on the queue. And if they wanted it, then he was going to give it to them. And he should, because that's the professionally right thing to do. Honor your commitments, giving them first right of refusal. Now, as it turns out, they had moved on. Like, I think their focus had shifted, and the queue wasn't a fit after all, and gonna pitch it off to this other library. And who knows what's going to happen. Might end up on TV. I hope so for him. But you don't, if it's unsigned and there's no paperwork, whether it's a taxi forward or whether it's a verbal commitment through email and text, you don't legally owe them anything. With taxi forwards, no. If they're taxi returns, then absolutely not. If they're forwards but you haven't heard from the library, then a couple of months. If you've heard from the library and then the trail goes cold, now you're into right of refusal and all of that. And I had that happen with taxi. I had a forward. The library expressed interest and sent it off, and then nothing. As far as I know, the queue's over on their servers. We'll talk about that here in a moment. Like, what do you do if it's already published, already in a library? Talk about that here in a second. So, stock music. The second thing is repitch to other listings or follow up if it's been several months. Do your diligence to try to rekindle whatever spark got the relationship started to begin with. All right, the third thing you can do with your unused or unloved queues, publish it yourself. Publish it yourself, and that takes a couple of different flavors. The first and most obvious is Spotify or Apple Music, whether it's through DistroKid or a TuneCore, CD Baby. I just published a single just this week that's going to come out in December that I did as a collaboration with a piano player, jazz friend of mine named Joshua Glenn Wilson, and I've featured his music on the queue last year. We did a collaboration. It sounded kind of like the Muppet Show theme. Anyway, and we pitched a queue up to Taxi, and they rejected it for silly reasons. And that's fine. That's fine. They don't have to take my music, but we really believe in it. And so we pushed it up to Spotify. And this is the first time I'm using SoundCloud, the SoundCloud Pro, because they had SoundCloud bought Repost, I think is the name of the company, and absorbed that whole DSP publishing up to the song distributors. And so this is the first single that I'm doing with that. So far, it's been really, really easy, really easy. But just publish it yourself up on the Spotify or Apple Music. You have that within you. And it's never been cheaper. It sure as heck has never been easier to get your music into these digital record stores. The gatekeepers are gone, my friends. The gatekeepers are gone. You don't need record labels. You don't need big producers. You just need a way to make good music and pay your monthly subscription fee, whether it's through DistroKid, which I've distributed with or through, and now I'm trying SoundCloud. And will it make a ton of money? No, probably not. But you know what? When you're battling rejection, when you're hearing no and no, or even worse, eerie silence and eerie silence, you know what, friends? Sometimes you just need a W, right? You just need to put a win in the win column. And if that means doing it for yourself, then I think that's sometimes more important than a placement or a forward from Taxi. If you're beating your head against the wall and nothing is changing, then grab the wheel yourself and put your music out on Spotify. I mean, there might be a reason. Might be a reason that it hasn't gotten placed. Whether, it's just not the right fit. Maybe it's not that great. I mean, if we're just being honest. Or maybe it's not library ready or stock music ready. Maybe it's art and not, artisan. Maybe it's not a plate of cookies. Maybe you made a 4-course dinner. I'm mixing all my metaphors, but. So put it out there. Take some agency and some ownership over your own musical career and post it up. If for anything, even if you're the only person that ever listens to it, sometimes having done it is the real victory. Not how many people listen, but the fact that you didn't need to depend on a publisher or Taxi or some other faceless gatekeeper at the other end of an email address. You took something that you made that came out of your brain and your creative self, and you put it out. You published it. You did something with it. Like I said, sometimes you just need a win in the win column. And if that means creating the win yourself, then do it. And then if it gets published, then you can pull it off of Spotify. Pull it off of Spotify, take it out of Content ID, retitle it, and give it to another library if it can find a home. Let's say you want to take that one step further. Did you know that you can be your own publisher? Did you know that there's really nothing stopping you from trying to get your music on TV? You can right now. You can sign up for Source Audio or Disco Libraries, and you can put all of your music into your own catalog, and you can start publishing it, and you could start pitching it to USA Network or CBS Sports. Did you know you could do that? There's nothing stopping you from doing that other than finding some contact information. Okay. Now, that is an uphill battle, and you're going toe-to-toe with other publishers who have been at this a long time and have, in my own experience, 35, 40 years, not mine, but my CBS publisher, nearly 40 years of relationship building. So just know that those are the waters you're swimming in, but there's nothing stopping you from jumping into the water. Just know you're a teeny tiny shark versus some great whites that have been at it a really long time. But if you want to, if you have the drive, if you have the networking skills, if you have the catalog, then you could do that. You could throw your hat in that ring. Now, I mentioned catalog. If you come at a network like Discovery Channel, they're not going to talk to you unless you have thousands of cues in your catalog. They're just not. They need a lot of music, and they need vendors. They need publishing companies. They need libraries. And 20, 30, 100, 500 cues. Probably, I know for a fact, because I've talked to the music manager at Discovery Channel. Yeah, they're not going to talk to you unless you have several thousand cues in your catalog, for the most part. So that's also part of swimming in those deep ocean waters. Not just you're going against the relationship, and you're going against all the time they've spent building their business, you're going against the strength of their catalog. So just know that. But there's nothing stopping you. You can go do it right now. You can go buy Source Audio and start branding yourself as a library. Disco Libraries looks even better. It's fantastic. It gives me like grand ideas. So who knows? Maybe you get you have that publisher gene, the publisher bug. Definitely been bitten by the publisher bug myself. Some really exciting things ahead. Can't talk about it now, but exciting things from the publishing side of things, from the artist development, or should I say artisan development side of things. So you can pitch to stock music libraries. That's thing number one. You can repitch, or rather, I should say, instead of pitching to stock music, you can publish up to stock music. So that's number one. Number two, you can repitch, keeping in mind that you don't owe those unplaced connections, whether they're forwards or returns. You don't owe them anything. And if it's been several months, then move on. If it's a library that had a relationship and the fires were burning, then maybe rekindle. Then number three, publish it your dang self. Put it out on Spotify. Put a win in the win column. Or start your own music catalog. You can do that. The fourth thing, let's say it's already in a library. Let's say you have a cue that got picked up, that got published, that hasn't found any love, that hasn't found a home. It's in the catalog, but just isn't doing anything. It's just sitting there. Well, the first thing I would do is I would follow up. I would follow up with them and say, hey, man, why hasn't this gotten a home? Why doesn't it get placed? Have a conversation. Believe me, the other end of that email address is a human being. They're not soulless robots, right? You're not dealing with giant conglomerates. They're people, just like me and you, looking to scratch out a career in the music business. And so they want to help you. They have a very vested interest in seeing you succeed. And so if you got something in a catalog that hasn't gotten placed, then start the conversation. Hey, Joe, I'm really excited to continue being a part of, library catalog name. But I've noticed that several of my cues have never found a home yet, and then maybe list them off. Not in any kind of accusatory way, but really more like, what could I be doing? Put it on you. What can I do to help things along there? Or why do you think these haven't found any traction? No, you probably should be prepared to hear some truth. I would hope a library isn't going to just, gloss it over. I'd hope they'd be straight shooters with you. But they might tell you, it's just not working. Or they might say, we love the cues, but the right opportunity just hasn't come along yet. Or they might say, hey, we forwarded along to a lot of shows, but it just, for whatever reason, the editors aren't choosing it. And that's all okay. But it starts with the conversation. You can't do anything. You can't do anything until you start the dialogue of why do you think this hasn't found a home yet? So start there. Then hopefully you'll get an understanding. Hopefully you won't get ghosted. Now, if you're getting ghosted, then that's a whole other thing, and that is a relationship in atrophy, and so that's a tough thing. If you're getting ghosted by a library, I definitely would not be sending them any more music. I would probably be cutting bait and moving on. That's just me. Your mileage may vary. All right. So let's say it's been a couple of years, and we're assuming a couple of years. If it's been 6 months, no, that's way too soon. We're talking, hey, I gave you this thing a year, 2, 3 years ago. The longer it's been, then the easier this next part is, which is ask for it back. The worst they can say is no. Even if you've signed a contract that says, in perpetuity, if you've started the dialogue by saying, hey, I've noticed this hasn't found any love and it's been 3, 4, 5 years. And I think I can find a home for it. Say, would you be willing to release that? Would you be willing to remove it from your catalog? Now, you should be prepared to hear no, which is totally fine. They are absolutely within their legal rights. If you've signed a contract in perpetuity, they're 100% in their legal rights to not give it back. In which case, definitely can't, just don't take it and retitle it and try to do any of that. Woo, that is professional suicide. Let's not do that. But if you really believe in your cue and you think you really do have a home for it, probably in another library, I don't know if I would jeopardize the relationship capital to try to get my cue back just so I can put it up on Spotify. That doesn't feel like a good trade. But if you think you actually might have another relationship and another home, then start the conversation. The worst they can say is no. But that's not been my experience. That's not been my experience. Anytime I have ever asked for a cue back after several years and the cue hasn't gotten placed at all, it's always been a yes. Because again, these are human beings on the other side trying to do as right by you as you are by them. And heck, they probably appreciate the fact that you didn't just retitle it and try to send it off. Again, don't do that, folks. Do not do that. That is a professional risk you should not take. But ask for it back. And again, if they say no, move on. And the third part of this, if it's already in a library and you've followed up, you can't find why it's gotten placed, you've asked for it back, maybe they said no. The third part of this is just have patience. Just have patience. Be patient. Sometimes it takes a while for the music to filter through. I've told this story on the podcast before, but my first year with football, I wrote 17 cues. This was 2015. I wrote 17 cues. And of those 17, only 5 saw air and only 2 got rotation. Which means that in that first season, 12 cues went completely unused. And one of those cues didn't get placed until like 5 years later. Was it 5 years? Yeah, it was 2020. Yep. 5 years later, Q found a home. So you might just need to be patient. This is this career is a long, long game, and the arc bends very slowly, but you have to have patience with it. By the way, I meant to mention we talked about asking for it back. Some contracts do have what's called a reversion clause, which says after X amount of time or after X dollars, if it hasn't made X amount of dollars, you can ask for it back. And exclusivity doesn't kick in until, like, there's a condition to the exclusivity. One library I was working with was until this queue made $1,000 in sync fees, then it is considered non-exclusive. And at any point I could ask for it back. But once it hit $1,000, it was exclusive. They claim the copyright and they're on, which is fine. And of course, if your queue ever gets placed even just once, asking for it back, I believe, should be off the table. It should be off the table. And then you're just back to being patient. So yeah, those are the 4 things. Thing number 1, Well, the 4 things you can do with your unloved music. Thing number 1, try to find a stock music marketplace or a non-exclusive deal. Thing number 2, repitch it. If it's a taxi listing, repitch it to another taxi listing. Or take the cue and try to find another library home for it if it's been signed or if it hasn't been signed. Thing number 3, publish it yourself. Spotify, Apple Music, or maybe create your own catalog. And then the thing number 4, if it's already in a library, find out, follow up, find out what the deal is, see if there's anything you can do to help, kind of oil the machinery. You can ask for it back, or you can just be patient. But the bonus 5th thing, technically, this isn't something you do with the music. It's something you do with yourself. And this is what I do 99% of the time. Are you ready for it? Just move on. Just move on. Let it go. Release the cue into the universe. I don't think any cue is so important for the most part. There might be that 1% that's worth fighting for. But let it go. Move on. Release the cue. Just write more. Just go out and write some more. Take that cue, open up the DAW, open up the session, do a save as, strip out all of the MIDI and use all of the sounds and just write something else. Don't change the EQs. You can use the same chord progression, maybe put it in a different key or whatever. Just make more. This goes back to the whole this isn't art thing. This is what artisans do. Right? This is why it's not art. This is why it's so valuable not to treat these cues like precious art. Because you feel like you have to grab onto those because they're so rare and so unique that you're going to burn through like emotional capital trying to keep up with all of these and track them down and reclaim them and all of that. And I get it. I totally get it. This cue that I was talking about earlier where another library had committed to it and then didn't pick it up, that cue is worth fighting for. It needs to find some homes. But if it's signed, then yes, just move on. Just move on. Even before, I probably should have said that, but I wanted to save it till last because this is kind of the nuclear option here. Just release it, move on. It's what Dean Krippain talks about in his book, The Write, Submit. The third part is forget. Forget about it. Just move on. Release it into the universe. Now, if it's unsigned, then keep pitching it. But if after a couple of pitches, right, a couple of taxi listings, even maybe it's not finding any love on Pond 5 or the stock music libraries, or it's even rejected from the stock music libraries, just release it. Chalk it up to a learning experience, because maybe if you're being honest with yourself, maybe it's not that great. Maybe it's not usable. Maybe you wrote that for you. And its life existed solely to help take you or get you to somewhere else in your production process, in your creative process, your emotional process, whatever. But it might not be that good. And that's okay, because every cue is another step in your journey. So just go make more. Just stop listening to this podcast. Just go write more. Quit obsessing over unused, unplaced things. I should tell myself, I can see myself right there. So I'm going to look at myself. Hey, Dave. Quit obsessing about cues that haven't gotten placed. Just get back to writing, my dude. Telling myself that. That's the real takeaway. That's how you sustain a career, not tracking down all the tendrils of cues that you have placed in various listings and all of that. Just go write some more. Just freaking go write some more. That's where I want to leave it. Go write some more. Move on and go write some more. But what about you? Now that I've dropped that nuclear bomb on you, what about you? Have you had any success in repitching or the stock music industry? Or have you gone out on your own and published your own music? Have you had any success in getting music back from a publisher? I'd love to hear from you. Why don't you let us know in the comments below? And I do read all those comments and I make an effort to respond to those. But we're going to take a quick break. We're going to take a listen. When we come back, we're going to be taking a listen to Designed Elegance, which is an advertiser-friendly elegant cue written by Rolpf Schild. And I'm trying to pronounce his name, very German, Schild, that kind of the harder D, Rolpf. And it's an interesting situation and an interesting arrangement that he has with another group of composers. And they're kind of like this think tank composer. So I want to talk about that. We're going to take a listen to that. But first, let's hear from Mrs. 52 Q's Shannon Croft, who's going to tell you all about the community.
Hey y'all, I'm Shannon Croft, and I want to tell you that the 52 Q's podcast is made possible by viewers and listeners just like you, composers and producers who are looking for a better way to connect and collaborate. You see, 52 Q's isn't just another website selling static, pre-recorded videos to a mass audience. It's a fun, vibrant, and positive community that comes together online for sharing cues, getting feedback, and discussing what's up in the production music industry. You'll find both personalized feedback and live interaction, which are the best and fastest ways to grow your skills and earn more placements. The best part is that the 52 Q's community is absolutely free. And when you're ready to take your career to the next level, we offer friends and family subscriptions, which unlock weekly live streams, live interactive group feedback sessions, monthly interactive workshops, and more. Head over to 52qs.com and sign up today. And while you're there, check out our personalized feedback videos, private lessons, and of course, merch. I can't wait to see you at 52qs.com.
All right, that was Designed Elegance, and that was by Rolpf Schild. Thank you so much for sending this along. I really enjoyed it, and I want to mention this trio music. This is really interesting thing that they're doing, and there's Rolpf right there. Hey, Rolpf, how you doing, buddy? Him and 5 other composers, including community member Hans York. Hope Hans. How are you doing, Hans? I know you watch. It's like a kind of a clatch, a composer clatch that all gets together and they write music to pitch. They're not publishers necessarily, but they get together and they write music to pitch. And it reminds me a lot of the arrangement when I came on board with the company then called Unified Sounds. And it's what they were, is they were a group of composers, a cabal that filled in like if there were strengths and weaknesses, everybody played to their strengths. And me coming on board with them was they needed somebody that could do kind of like epic and hip hop and EDM and lo-fi and that kind of stuff. So that's what that was my in to that side of the business. So, but to the cue itself, I thought the sound at the top, I really enjoyed it. I mean, it's fantastic. The mix sounds great. I did feel like the percussion sound. I feel like I can hear that sound quite a bit, and it became distracting for me. It reminds me in some of the Omnisphere patches where it might be like a kalimba played with a sugar packet, which is cool, but like I can't unhear the sugar packet happening. And so I felt like that was a little percussive on the downbeat there. But I think this is all absolutely working. I like the builds. I think it's growing organically. I like the video too. I think that's really, really cool. Now that I'm playing that, I hope this doesn't generate a YouTube copyright flag. This is the first time I've done a YouTube video, and so I hope that it doesn't create a content ID. All that I'm prepared for that, but I hope. YouTube tends to frown on playing YouTube videos within other YouTube videos. So we'll find out. I did feel like that edit point was a little large. I felt like the edit point was a little long and it could be tighter. And it seems like we had an emotional shift here. We've shifted gears. And so as I'm listening to this, I don't know, you mentioned this is I don't know if this is a sampler or if this is just one sample. I took it to mean that this was one cue, in which case we've really changed emotional gears here. Changed harmonic progression and the vibe from the beginning. So from that to... So the vibe seems to change a little bit. And I think it's rooted in the harmonic progression. Love that added. I think that really, really works. Right, and so it ends on that minor chord. And so we emotionally shifted to this more kind of melancholy, more dramatic. And I think we veered away from the elegance that we had here. And so our tonic is down and kind of serious versus which is tonic. And so depending on what this cue is looking to do, it feels like two cues stitched together. That's kind of how it's coming across to me, and for all I know, that might actually be what it is, and that would explain the super long edit point. Instrumentation, I think it's the same instrumentation, but I think it shifts emotion a little bit too much. But I do appreciate you sending this along. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. Like I said, this was sent along during our weekly feedback thread, and we post threads every single week. This was for week 46. And every week we post new feedback threads that we encourage community members. It's free. Community members to post, send their thoughts on other cues, post cues, whatever they are working on this week. And if this is something that you enjoyed, if you liked the cue breakdown, this is something that I do for plenty of folks. They send me their music, they send me their cues, and I give a complete cue breakdown where I look through the form, the structure, harmonic language, melodic ideas, instrumental language, the mix, title, all of that. If that's something that you're looking for, then you can check out 52cues.com/coaching. And while you're there, you can also check out my other coaching services like mastermind groups and one-on-one sessions. I would absolutely love to help out in any way I can, help you out on your journey in production music. So that's going to do it for me this week. Next week, earlier I mentioned my interview with Stephen Bedall. That's actually coming up next week because the year is just, I can't believe we're almost to December by now. But that is coming up next week, Stock Music Strategies with Stephen Bedall. And then Stephen's also going to be doing a workshop for the friends and family of 52 Cues. So you definitely don't want to miss that. But again, I have to give a special word of thanks to the family, friends, and patrons of 52 Cues who help keep everything going. Thank you so much. Know that I love and I appreciate all of you. Thank you so much. But that's going to do it for me. I hope that you had a good week 46, and I know that your week 47 is going to be amazing. And how do I know that? Because I know that the universe has amazing plans just for you. Until next time, everybody, peace. The 52 Cues podcast is copyright 2022 Dave Croft, all rights reserved. The music played on the podcast is copyright of their respective owners and is used for educational purposes only. For more information, including joining the 52 Cues community and submitting your cue for consideration on the podcast, head over to 52cues.com.